Tax season is coming, and if you, like myself, have hundreds of receipts that need to match your bank statements, then doing this manually is going to be hours of pain. So that's why I built an n8n workflow that does it automatically using Gemini 2.5 Flash, which costs 4 times less than the 2.5 Pro, but still gives you a 95% accuracy. So in this video, I'm going to show you how to set up the folder structure, process all your receipts with OCR, then automatically match each receipt to the right bank transactions using a smart scoring algorithm that I designed, which all done automatically using n8n. So with that being said, if you're interested, let's get into it. All right, so before we jump in, a quick intro for those who are new here. My name is Eric, and I have spent years as a senior software engineer at companies like Amazon, AWS, and Microsoft. And I have started this YouTube channel to share everything I have learned along the way, from AI encoding to automations, Web3, career developments, and more, all broken down into practical tutorials that you can actually follow. So if you're ready to level up, make sure to check out my YouTube channel and hit that subscribe button. Now let's get back to the video. All right, so to get started, first thing first, we're gonna have a Google Drive like this, which is an empty folder. So we're gonna create a new folder, and we're gonna divide the unprocessed receipts and the processed receipts separate into 2 separate folders. So we're gonna have a unprocessed folder right here. And we're also going to create a new folder here called the process folder. So we have a process and unprocessed folder, which will be inside of our Google Drive, which is perfectly fine. So what we're going to do now is we're also going to create a Google Sheets, which will keep track of all the receipts that we have and add them onto this Google Sheet right here. In this case, I'm just going to click on Google Sheets right here. And for this one, feel free to name it however you want. I'm just going to rename this to be transactions statement plus receipts. So here I'm just going to have a sheet which keep track of all the statements, right? So all the bank statements that we have, we're going to put it here. And we're also going to have our receipts, which we're basically going to rename this sheet number here to be sheets receipts. And now once we have 2 sheets, I'm just going to add these columns inside of our receipts. So we have our invoice date, the process date, the status, also the receipt ID. These kind of things we need to put inside our receipt table, right? Now, what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna put some receipts inside of our unprocessed folder, and we're just gonna have this n8n here to trigger this workflow to basically process all the unprocessed receipts. All right, so now you can see that we have a bunch of receipts uploaded onto this Google Drive folder for the unprocessed folder. And now if we were to navigate back to the n8n here, this is the exact workflow that I introduced from this video right here, which you can check it out. But what we're gonna do here is we're gonna trigger this workflow here to process all the receipts one by one and add them onto the right folder. So in this case, what we're gonna do now is I'm gonna walk you through the entire workflow and basically make sure to tell you exactly how you can be able to set it so that it knows exactly which file and which folder is gonna target for this workflow, right? So you don't want to target for the wrong file or the wrong folder. So what we're gonna do here is I'm gonna change the schedule trigger here. So basically what I set is I basically set it to 2 minutes. Now every 2 minutes, we're gonna have a workflow being processed because the average time for this workflow to run is roughly 1 minute. So I'm just gonna leave 1 minute room here so that it's gonna trigger every 2 minutes to basically process all the receipts. And first thing first, what we're gonna do here is that instead of a workflow, we're gonna get a file. So we're gonna get a file from the unprocessed folder because we know that those files inside of this folder is unprocessed. And then what we're gonna do here is we're gonna download it, extract the base 64 string so that we can use it to pass it through the OCR and extract the information that we want. So first thing first, what we do here is that based on the file extension, right? If it's JPEG, if it's PNG, if it's image, it's gonna go through this path right here to process the image. If it's a PDF, then it's gonna go through this path. And you might be wondering why they're separate paths. Well, the reason is because for PDF, there could be multiple pages. So in this case, we're gonna have a separate process to process the PDF, and we'll also have a code node which will aggregate those data into one single markdown format so that we can pass it to the large language model to extract the right information. So in this case, what we do here is you can see once we have our Google OCR here to process the file, but one thing to know before we move on is that I actually changed this to be Gemini 2.5 Flash because I know that in the previous couple videos, we were using the Gemini 2.5 Pro. And the reason why is because I have a large amount of files. And the Flash here has a lower cost compared to the Pro. And if you were to look at the comparison here, I actually did some research, you can see that the Gemini 2.5 Flash has the input cost of 0.3 per 1 million tokens, which gives you the accuracy of 95%, which is probably the highest accuracy among all the Flash models out there. But if we were to compare this with the Gemini 2.5 Pro, you can see that it's only 68% accuracy, which is like 3% higher compared to the Flash. But I won't recommend go with the Pro if you have like a large amount of file because the cost here is actually 4 times higher compared to the 2.5 Flash. So that's why I was using this one, because it has the highest accuracy and also has the cheapest cost per million tokens. So if the cost wasn't an issue, you can go with the highest model here, or even the highest model, which I think is the or in this case Gemini 3 Pro. But if the cost is an issue, you can try it out. But if the cost is the issue, you want to process that for a large amount of files like myself, then my recommendation here is probably go with the Gemini Flash here. So in this case, that's exactly what I did. And if you want to change the model here to different models, simply you can just come to the HP node right here, and simply you can just set the model that you want. For example, here I basically set it to Gemini-2.5 Flash, and then you can simply just get your API key from the Google AI Studio and basically just gonna input a key, append it after the equal sign here. And that's exactly what I did for both the OCR API call right here. And once I have those nodes set up, right, I'll basically include a large language model here, use it whichever you want. You can use Gemini model, you can use Anthropic models, you can use OpenAI models, but I actually have my own models here deployed in Azure. So I basically use that to extract the right information that we want and basically output it onto a Google Sheets. And inside of Google Sheets here, let me take a look for this. So you can see here that I basically input the invoice date on when this receipt was being purchased, right? And also set the status here as being processed. That's very important because later on, we're gonna use the status here to find out which file is being processed and which file is being matched, right? And we also have our receipt ID, the vendor, category, expense type, a short description on what this receipt is about, and also the location on where that receipt is located in our Google Drive folder, the total amount, the total tax, the GST, the PST, and also the payment method. So the payment method here is basically the last 4 digits of the card. I find that to be very useful. So here inside of our information extractor, so if I were to open the input schema, here is exactly what it looks like. So for example, for date, it's gonna be a string, and here is a short description on exactly what we want to extract from our receipt, right? And you can see that we have a receipt ID, vendors, and different categories. We will list out these categories right here. And we also have a description of each of them. Then if you were to scroll down, you can see that this is the payment method, which is basically the last 4 digits of the payment card, which can be able to extract from the receipt. So that's exactly what we did, right? So we have our OCR system and also a large language model here to extract information and eventually output it onto Google Sheets. And then what I did here is I also make sure that it's basically moved from the unprocessed folder to the processed folder so that we don't process the same receipts again, right? And also update the file name based on some information that we collected from the receipts. And basically that's the workflow that I have. I have this workflow run for a couple of days and it has helped me to process hundreds of receipts, which here you can see this Google Sheets. You can see that these are all the receipts has been processed. And here, if we were to look at one of the receipts, for example, like this one right here, which contains 313.87. And here, if we were to look at the receipt, this is the preview. You can see that this is the exact receipt amount, which is this number right here. And we can also see the last 4 digits of the payment card. So I can actually be able to verify this here. You can see is 6307. And now if I were to open this receipt right here, you can see that it was being processed October 23rd. And now if I were to come back to this receipt here, you can see that this is the exact date that's being processed, which is the same as what we have inside of our image here. And if I were to take another one that's not Costco, for example, like Foods Up, for example, this one, it was 580.03. And if I were to click on this receipt, you can see that it was also 580.03. And this is the date, October 31st. And if we were to look at the date of being purchased, which is October 31st. Okay, and there shouldn't be any tax amount for this one because it's just a receipt. So you can see that the tax amount is set to 0. All right, so pretty much that's what we have for our receipt table. So once we have all the receipts being processed, right? So there are hundreds of them. And what we can do now is basically going to match each receipt that we have here into the statement table. So here you can see that these are all the bank statement that we have. So we have our date and the amount, and we're gonna match them with the right transactions that we have. So I actually test this with a bunch of algorithms and bunch of scripts that's best fit. But I find that this one's the best because here's the situation, right? So we could have a situation where this is our receipt, right? This is our receipt, and the amount for the receipt is $70, and the date was purchased was October 8th. And the vendor, Costco, card number doesn't really matter, right? So as we have those information in our Google Sheets, what's happening here is that sometimes there could be statutory holiday, maybe October 8th is a Thanksgiving, and the date that posted on the statement here is actually October 12th. So what we don't want to do here is that we want to match with the exact same amount, but the dates here, we want to find the closest date from all the transactions that we have. There could be a situation where we match with the amount, but there could be the same amount with this different transactions, right? There could be a transaction was made from XYZ, different account number, or maybe a different date, right? This could be like October 11th, right? So what we want to find here is that we want to find the closest date, but also have the same vendor and also the card number. So we use actually a score system that will basically evaluate, not only we want to find the closest date, but we also want to find the receipt, or in this case a transaction, that can match the same vendor, the same card number, which will give us the highest accuracy for matching the receipt with the right transaction. I hope you follow along so far, but if you don't, that's fine. I'll just show you exactly this flow logic on how we basically match each receipt that we have to the right transaction. So what we do here is that we basically take a receipt from our receipt table, and first thing first, what we do here is we check the amount. So there could be a situation where we have purchased from USD, but we have to convert that into a Canadian dollar because we're a Canadian-based company. So we want to make sure that we have all the currency here in the same currency here, which is in CAD, which is Canadian dollar. And once we convert the currency here to the right currency, what we're going to do here is we're going to see if this amount has a match, right? So let's say if it's $70.01, we're going to see if inside of our transactions we have that amount. If it doesn't, then we don't have a match. If it does, then what we're going to do here is we're going to find the closest date among all the exact matches that we have. There could be one match, then we're just going to go ahead and select that. If we have multiple matches, then we're just going to calculate using this match score that we just set. So we have our base point, which is 100 points. And if we match with the card number, it's going to be plus 20. If it's matched with vendor here, it's going to be plus 10. Okay, so total all the things that we add up, then we're going to find a match. Then what we can do here is we're basically going to output it onto the transaction table, right? So that's basically how the algorithm work. And if you were to translate this to code, it's much more hard to understand for people who are non-technical. So that's why I draw a diagram like this to show exactly how it works. All right, so with that hard part getting out of the way, let me show you the exact workflow to match each receipt that I have for the transaction table. So this is the entire workflow that I have. Basically, you can see like what I mentioned, right? Find a receipt from our receipt table and also find all the transactions from the transaction table. And then here, this is the smart matcher here, which is a JavaScript node, which does exactly what I just showed you, which will basically match the amounts and also find the closest dates, as well as find the closest match wins. Okay, and then once we have found a match, we're just going to update that inside of our transactions and also the receipt table. If it's not matched, we're just going to update the receipt saying that this record here, we did not find a match. Okay, and basically what I did here is I basically run this workflow every 3 minutes or so and have this process entirely for all the records that you have inside of your table. And as a result here, you can see that for our receipt table, all of them have been matched or unmatched, and you can see the status right here. Okay, for those who are unmatched, maybe it could be the amount here we cannot find. So let's say if we find this amount right here inside of our statements. So if I were to do a search, you can see that we don't have that amount right here. Okay, and let's say if I were to take a look at all the matches that has been matched, for example, this is the date and this was the date of invoice. And here, if we were to scroll all the right, you can see that that's the exact amount that's being matched, which shows right here from the bank statement. Now, just like what I mentioned, there could be a situation where there are receipts that's processed with different date. For example, it was October 20th, and here the receipt date was October 18. But we do have the amount matched exactly like what we have here, which shows that this algorithm here is able to match with the closest dates based on all the record that we have. And if you were to scroll down, you can see there's also another record, which the date was posted on the bank was October 27, and the transaction was made on October 26. And this is the transaction, which was made 458.12. And here you can see this is also the amount right here, which matched exactly like what we have inside of our bank statement. Okay, so I actually have been verifying all the records that we have, and you can see we have matched a couple hundred records already, which saves me so much time because I have to manually match each receipt to each record in our bank statement. But whereas this system right here will help you to automatically match that, no problem, right? Now for these records, these are all the transactions from October of the month. So here is the month of November, which I also have done using the same workflow here, which here you can see that these are all the receipts that's being matched for all the statements, for all the transactions from the November statement right here. Okay, so you can see that I have tested this with a bunch of workflows, with a bunch of data. You can see that for the first record, it matched with the date and also the price. And if we were to look at the actual image, this is the amount that's being cost. And you can see here that it actually matched with a lot of records being found here, okay? Now, I'm not only just showing you the good side of the workflow, but I'm also gonna show you the results for the records that's not being matched from our bank statement. For example, this amount right here, if I were to do this amount search inside of a receipt, so if I were to do a quick search, you can see that this amount right here cannot be found in the receipt, which means we cannot find the receipt for this record, for this transaction right here. That's completely normal. There could be time where it was made from a different card or maybe it was paid in cash. So we cannot find it. That's completely normal here. All right, so now once you believe that this workflow here works, let me show you exactly how you can be able to integrate this into your own system. So here you can see that we have a bunch of bank statements here which have not been matched, have not been processed at all. And basically I just copied them from the bank statements, right? And here is all the receipts that's being processed by the OCR system, but did not match using the Smart Matcher workflow that I show you. So in this case, I'm gonna show exactly how to match these receipts to that transaction that I just showed you. So in this case, you can use the link in the description to get the full workflow. But once you get to this stage, once you import the workflow like this, now I'm going to show you exactly how to set this up. So first, I'm just going to click on the first node and I'm going to select the right Google Sheets, which here you can see this is the Google Sheets. And here I'm just going to change the column to filter here by the status, which here is going to be filtered by the process status. So we're just going to set the process status here and we're just going to return only one first matching row. So we're just going to process one receipt at a time here, and here you can see we have our data. Then what we're going to do here is that once we get a receipt, we're going to get all the unmatched transactions from the transaction table. So I'm just going to execute this using the right Google Sheet table. Then here what we're going to do here is I'm going to use the Smart Matcher here, which will basically help us to match the receipt with the right transaction. So basically, I already have done everything for you. All you have to do here is that maybe you have a bunch of sheet columns like invoice days, process day, status. You can set your column names here inside of this Google node, right? Or in this case, JavaScript node, right? So this is the column mapper where it's going to map each column name to the value that we're going to use inside of the code. And if we were to scroll to the bottom here, it will basically show you that do not edit this unless you know what you're doing. This is the matching logic, which I show you from the Draw, right, from the drawing board. And basically you can just match whatever you have for your Google Sheets column names here instead of the column mappings to basically match with the right name here for your columns. So if I were to execute this, you can see that we have one receipt match with one of the transaction from our statements. And if we were to verify this, you can see that on the right, we have our transaction date and the amount. And here you can see on the left, we have a receipt, which is exactly the same amount here. So now if I were to execute to see if it's matched, it is matched, and it's gonna go to the upper route to basically update the transaction table. So here I'm just going to select the statement table here and basically update the values. So here I'm just gonna update the value based on the row number. So the row number here is going to be based on the transaction row number, which is 1306. That's going to be the row number. And then we're also going to update the date. So in this case, I'm just going to scroll down here, and here is the transaction date. I'm just going to drag it over here. And in terms of status here, I'm just going to say matched, okay? And in terms of the card last 4 digits, that's going to be the transaction card. And also, let's see here. So we have the amounts. So I'm just going to set total amount here, and also the category for the receipts, and also the notes. And I'm just gonna also put the receipt ID, the vendor, right, category, the expense type, also I need to set the receipt ID here somewhere. So this is the correct receipt ID, this is the correct receipt location, and also this is the total amount, the subtotal amount, and also we have the total tax, GST, PST right here, and also the payment method for the last 4 digits of card, and also the currency and the province, as well as the exchange rate. So that's the exchange rates if we have any, and also the original amount, which is this one from USD dollar. So that's pretty much it, okay? Let's see here. So we are also gonna have our score. So if you want to get the match score, you can also get that for your reference. Pretty much, let me double check here. That's pretty much all we have. We can also update our, let's see, we can also be able to update our amount. So that's gonna be the transaction amount instead of the receipt amount. So pretty much that's all we have here for updating the transaction table. If we were to execute this, you can see that we have one row of data being executed. Now, if I were to come back to Google Sheets here, you can see if we were to scroll down, This is the row where it has the data being updated. So you can see that we have our minus $10 right here. And we also have the receipt number, all those kind of things are added onto, joined onto the transaction table. Okay, very, very detailed here. So once we have this, we're just gonna also update the receipt table as well. So here we're just gonna simply update the right row with the status being matched. So in this case, I'm just gonna select the row number that we're gonna match. So in this case, we're just gonna match by the receipt row. So here it's gonna be the second row right here. And we're just gonna delete a couple columns because we're not gonna update those values. The only value we're gonna update here is gonna be the status, which we're gonna switch to match. We're also gonna be able to add an additional column here for the process date to basically update the process date to be date.now, right? The current time that it's being updated. So we can set that here. And now what we can do here is we're also going to update the receipt on match. So let's say if the transaction wasn't a match, then we're just going to set the status here to be unmatched for the receipt table. So we're just going to set the process date to be date.now as well. So the current time. And also the status here I set it to unmatched. And back to the update receipt here for the match node, we're just going to execute the following node, which you can see is being matched. And now if I were to execute or come back to the Google Sheets, you can see that this row right here is being matched and updated. So here you can see I have been running this for a couple times for a couple executions. And here you can see, we can be able to see that there are some rows that are being matched. There are some rows being unmatched. And basically we have the workflow currently fully running here. Okay. So pretty much that's how you can be able to set it up and have the smart matcher here to match all the receipts with all the transactions you have inside of your Google Sheets using n8n. But mostly you can see that most records here are being matched, which will save me so much time. And believe it or not, I just have to focus on what's not being matched and just try to target those records there, okay? All right, so that's the complete system from raw receipts to the matched transactions, all automated, done with n8n. Now, if you want to skip the bill and use the exact workflow that I showed you today, I'm going to leave the link in the description below. You will get the Invoice AI Agent, the Gemini 2.5 Flash OCR workflow, and also the Smart Receipt Transaction Matcher, everything you need for the year-end bookkeeping. Now, if this saved your time, make sure to hit that like button here and subscribe for more n8n workflow tutorials. So with that being said, I'll see you in the next one.